And this is why I think I like talking about the fears, because learning about these fears in that are inherent in this center just really has helped a lot, that I can recognize it now in there, moments where I do feel like there's what's the reason why I'm not taking action, or what's the reason why I'm afraid to do this, or what's the reason why I haven't done this yet. And I
Hmm.
can usually pinpoint it to one or multiple gates. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, the human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Today, we're diving into
The spleen center, and more
E.
specifically, the fears in the spleen center.
Woo!
Woohoo! And you're supposed to ask, why would we want to focus on that?
Why do we want to focus on that?
Well, because I think fear is something that holds a lot of us back from doing what we want to do and knowing what we should do.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, we need more people who are willing to push through fear and start living the way they really want to, and not the way everybody else thinks they should. Hmm.
Yes.
How about that?
I struggle in social situations, especially like if me and Presley are out to eat. I'm like, babe, do you have to go pee? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, because I do too. Go find where the bathroom is.
Oh my gosh. How is that even possible?
Because I don't want to look stupid trying to find where the bathroom is.
I don't know
It's
if we're
gotten
talking
really
about those
bad.
kind of fears.
It's gotten kind of bad lately.
Huh. A little bit of anxiety. Well, there is anxiety. I mean, fear, I think anxiety is a form of fear, at least how it
Yeah.
shows up in the human design chart. Because I was actually looking into some of other, not some other, but I was just looking into some other sources around, human design. And I saw somewhere it was pointed out that there's 20 gates in the system that are associated with fear
Oh,
and some kind of anxiety,
oh,
which
good.
makes sense. But the mainly they are in the what we call the awareness centers, and we have three awareness centers in the system. Do you want to guess what they might be?
The spleen.
That's one, yes.
I'm gonna say the spleen, the root, and the solar plexus.
Close.
Oh,
There is no awareness in the root. It's more of a impulse
okay.
thing.
Okay. So if it's not the root,
Where would anxiety also reside, other than the
um,
spleen and the emotional solar plexus? Where does
and
your anxiety live?
I'm gonna say in the ego center. No, well, we talked about that. That was all about. Well, I don't know what sacral.
No, you got to
Oh,
think a little higher. So it's up in the ajna,
ah,
because the ajna is all about how you think and how you conceptualize, and so it's like trying to make sense of everything, and
hmm,
so that's a mental awareness. So the spleen center is one of our, well, is not one of, it is our oldest center of awareness, because if you think about it, how we evolved over time from being animals before we evolved from something,
yeah.
into the form of humans that we are now, which God knows where that's going. As we were talking before I got on here, that I went and voted in a primary election today, and God knows where this country's going. But that's why I feel strongly about human design. Let's get more people empowered. So
Let's use our brains.
these are something. Anyways, so well, we'll just start. What was I talking about? I was talking about the awareness center,
Oh,
and it
we've
being
evolved.
our, yeah, being our first really evolved awareness center
It's
because
very, very primal.
it is very primal. And it's because it has in it the things that regulate that, fight or flight instincts, because it's the center for instincts and survival and intuition and our well-being. And so within that is this baked in fear, because fear is kind of the motivating factor in this center. If you think about instinct and survival, right?
Hmm.
There's this awareness that there might be a present danger, you know?
Yeah.
And so it moves you into action quickly because it's very much it's not in the head. It's using all the senses around you, your skin, your smell, all of it, eyes, hearing, using all that to like help you survive.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so this fear equals alertness equals survival. So that's kind of baked into the system that there's going to be these fears associated with the splenic center. And like I said, it's that fight or flight response, but it's what helped us evolve because, well, we developed it over time, but also it's acting in our best interest for what is healthiest and what will most support our well-being, which is staying alive.
Yeah. And the continuation of the species and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's what helped us survive and thrive. So the problem is, as we have evolved and our actual awareness moved over time as we evolved as human beings, and our mental capacity developed and our brains developed differently, and language, and all that other things started happening. Um, our awareness moved more towards the mental awareness, the ajna. And so a lot of that, you can see the progression, I guess, throughout human evolution of when we started organizing, but then also when we started, I would say probably like once we kind of had a control for the most part over our environment, like we knew how to like build things, protect ourselves, and
Farm and stuff like that.
farm,
Grow
feed
our own food.
ourselves. Yeah, when things started to, I guess probably in the, I mean, I don't know, when great philosophers and everybody started, thinking more about our existence. And then also over the hundreds of years, the evolution into like the scientific, more logical, rational thinking, mental awareness really became like the main awareness center. And now as we're moving past that and we're progressing, and that shift away from the mental awareness occurred around the time that these 9 centers, we went from 7 to 9 centers back in the late 1700s is when we started shifting. Well, it would be after, yeah, 1781, because that's when the shift happened into the emotional awareness center, which is in the solar plexus. So now when you look at the spleen center as opposed to the solar plexus, which they're across from each other on the body graph, they used to
Hmm.
be in the same energy center, and that split into the two. It's more of a, the spleen is a moving you into action and creating and moving and doing through reaction. Like something happens, react, right?
Hmm.
Whereas the emotional solar plexus is where we're moving towards, going to be our main emotional or main awareness center, is being intentional with how we feel and being intentional with what it is we want to create, what we want to experience, what we want to do, by tuning into how we feel and how we experience emotion and being creative. So it's really interesting to see this progression in the through the eyes of the human design center.
Well, I have a question, but it doesn't entirely
Okay.
relate to what you just said.
All
So,
right.
like, what makes me a splenic projector? What exactly is it that designates that it's splenic?
Well, in your case specifically, it's
Yeah.
because you're a projector. So you do not have a sacral center defined. And your definition is in the head and ajna, and then in the root in the spleen. So the awareness piece or the authority is in that spleen center, because the spleen does have an awareness to it, right? So it's in the moment and it's there for your well being. It's there to inform you what to do. And so that being your only channel there, besides up in the head, which
Hmm.
there's no authority. Oh well, I wouldn't say there's no authority. There is, but that's kind of a different thing.
It's a lesser
This one,
authority, right?
yes, yes, because the
There was the authority hierarchy.
right, yeah, and usually, yes, splenic authority comes from that connection, usually to the root center, makes it a splenic authority. So that means that your authority is in the moment. Now, it doesn't change your strategy as a projector. You still, for big things, recognition, invitations, but you have that edge that some projectors do not have of having a splenic authority because you have that extra little um, quick decision making thing about, daily activities, but that might help you make decisions a little bit easier. It's for a projector. It's a good. I wouldn't say it's a good, like, not there's bad ones, but like you can trust your instincts because they're there to lead you in the right direction. Um. So okay, so the spleen center, like we said, intuition, health, survival, time. So we kind of did a little background there. So first of all, let's talk about the defined and the undefined spleen center because it kind of is tying into, well, when we start talking about the gates that are in the spleen center, um, how it might play out for you depending on if you're defined or not. So this, if you have a defined spleen center, you are someone who's more likely to take their health and well-being for granted because, remember, if you're defined in those areas, it means you have a more consistent access to it. So like your spleen, you're kind of, it's just kind of more natural for you to maybe tune into that splenic awareness. So it kind of running in the background, helping you make decisions about what's correct for you. You can just kind of have a knowing for something. There's a lot of knowing in the spleen center. However, you also need to be careful with a defined spleen center because you are so you're the spleen is also the kind of hub, the energetic hub of our immune system. And so you kind of have to be careful with a defined spleen center because you could have a more robust immune system, but that also means that you might wait too long and you may ignore certain signals that the
Oh.
body is giving you because you're kind of just used to, you kind of take your health for granted. And
Hmm.
so these are the people that when they get sick, they might get really sick because they've just been kind of operating on this, like, hey, I'm good, I'm good. And likewise with the undefined spleen center, they're going to be a little more sensitive to things like that. And they say, you know, it's a possibility the children that with undefined spleen centers are probably going to be the ones to get sick first when they go to school and things like that because there's not such consistent energy there in that center. Also, with which I thought was really interesting. So there's a lot around some of the things around timing with the spleen center because there is this, like, do you act, do you not act, in the moment, there is a
Right.
lot of timing and spontaneity and things there. I say people with an undefined spleen center might be a little um, more fluid with time, meaning they have a more flowy sense of what time is. People with defined centers might be a little bit more timely on that. But what I was going to say about the undefined center and well-being, because there's this thing about um remember I think we talked about in electromagnetics about the certain centers that are there's gonna be more of a draw in relationships between defined and undefined,
Hmm.
and it was the
Yeah.
spleen center. Do you remember why?
No.
Okay, it's all right. I know. So
Me again.
it's this feel good energy. When you have a defined spleen, it feels more like, to people with undefined spleens, which 55% of the population is defined, 45 undefined in the spleen. Um, it has this sense of safety and, well, it's well-being. It has this more solid sense of well-being to it. And so people with undefined spleens around that energy, remember, you're attracted, you take it in, you amplify it back, so it makes them feel really good around people with defined spleens. So this can tend to, in relationships, people might hold on a little bit longer than necessary if it's not a good relationship, because just the energy of that center feels good, which we talked about in the electromagnetics. So another thing about the undefined spleen is that they're kind of seen as people who hold on to things for too long. And this always kind of puzzled me, but I heard
Mhm.
an explanation of it recently that really made sense. And it says, well, if this is the center of well being, of what's good for you, right? If you are undefined, even if you have gates activated, but you're undefined,
Right.
it means you experience well being and what you need to know what's right for you in variable ways. So you might experience it different around other people. And it kind of gives this sense of not knowing exactly what you're going to need when you need it. And so they tend
Mm.
to hold on to things because they're like, oh, I might need this at a later date, because there's always this variability about what creates that sense of well-being and what's good for them. And that's the first time I heard it explained like that. And I was like, okay, that makes sense to me, because it didn't make sense to me before, but I get it
Yeah,
now. They're
that
like, I might need this for my own safety and well-being at
it
some point.
sounds better than just they hold on to things for too long.
Yeah.
It's like, but why?
Exactly. Well, I think that's a good reason why, because they're trying to make sure that they, are taken care of, they have what they need, and that they will survive. So you might need that 3-ring binder from 1982. You never know.
I just got rid of my heavy ass accounting textbook.
Oh, well, that could be a weapon or a doorstop.
Ugh, it really could. The thing probably weighed like 10 pounds. It was so heavy.
And then they do that thing where they're like, well, we don't want to buy it back because it's useless now. We have a new printing
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
It's like,
Oh,
oh,
of course.
okay. Every year. So, okay. So when we're looking at these gates, we're going to look at all the gates in the spleen center, which I'm very excited about.
How many are there?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gates.
7.
7 gates. Yes.
Noise.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. If you are defined, or if you have any of these gates defined, even if you have an open center or an undefined center, but you have these gates defined, it means that there's probably going to be present within you this, well, you'll recognize a lot of these fears if they are activated within your system. You'll experience them a little bit more consistently.
Okay.
So the one thing to note on this episode is that you and I both have defined spleen. So we don't have the experience of an undefined spleen, what it means, but I will say you only have one gate defined, which is
Yeah.
the one that creates your splenic definition, which is the gate 18 to
Shout
gate
out.
58. I have
How many do you have?
I have 5 out of the
Oh my
7.
gosh.
And this is why I think I like talking about the fears, because learning about these fears that are inherent in this center just really has helped a lot, that I can recognize it now in there, moments where I do feel like what's the reason why I'm not taking action, or what's the reason why I'm afraid to do this, or what's the reason why I haven't done this yet. And I
Mhm.
can usually pinpoint it to one or multiple gates
Well, you
of
have
what,
5.
which then helps clear that fear in a way. And it's, I want to point out also, it's not okay. Not that it's not. I want to point out that this awareness has helped us survive for all these hundreds of thousands of years as human beings, right? Um,
Mhm.
but its primary function of functioning through fear actually kind of works against us now, because we have moved through that mental awareness, moving to emotional awareness. It still helps us, this instinct and this intuition. There's a lot of intuition in this
Mhm.
center, but it also, getting up on stage and giving a speech is not the same as being chased by a bear. It's
Yes, it
like
is. Yes, it is. Oh, I can't confirm.
oh, I forgot you're afraid to go to the bathroom by yourself.
No, no, no. I'm not afraid to go to the bathroom by myself. I'm afraid of finding the bathroom.
Existential fear of walking through a restaurant. Okay. Well, not to make light. I know there's lots of people that I just wonder though, because like, didn't I guess was a kid, I didn't have you go find the bathroom by
I
yourself?
guess not.
I feel like I
I
did.
think I think me and Ian have the same fear.
Well, let me tell you, maybe, maybe you picked it up from your mother because I don't have a fear of finding the bathroom. I do scope it out though. I as soon as I get in a restaurant, I will look around for the most logical place for the bathroom to
I
be.
do that because I'm like, is it over there? Is it there?
Not afraid to ask though for directions,
I am.
but there is some wandering at times. And you're like, oh no.
Sometimes I
That's
like hide them.
well. So what I was gonna say is I did actually have this happen to me as a child when I was very small because I couldn't read, so I was very small. So I must have been like 2. No, I'm just kidding.
Grandma's like, go to the bathroom. Leave me alone.
God rest her soul. She raised me to be very independent. So and I think I wanted to go by myself. I don't remember, but we
Probably.
were like in a pancake house or something. And I was pretty young. So I was probably like 4 maybe. And she could see it wasn't far away because it was like in a pancake house, it was someplace like a breakfast place that the bathrooms were right next to each other, right?
Mhm.
You know, you could
The
see
men and the
there's
women.
yeah, you could see there's 2
Yeah.
doors. Go, there's the bathroom. It was in plain sight. So I go over there and God bless my little brain. I looked and I went, oh, I can't read. And I remember getting confused about that because I can't remember if they had the pictures on the signs then because that was something that developed over time, the symbols, men or women,
Mhm.
right? But anyway, so I chose wrong. I went into the men's room and I walked in and my little brain like exploded. I mean, I didn't see anything, but I realized quickly,
You're
these are
like,
not
this doesn't look right.
these are not mommies. So I do have that happened to me, Haley. I was scarred. I got through it though. I got through it. I've, I was
And
young. I
then
was really embarrassed. I remember that.
and then
But then
sometimes I'm afraid when I actually find the bathroom, sometimes they have like really confusing like signs for them. And you're like, is this the women's room or is this the
yeah,
women's room?
I know when they use like a slang term and you're like, am I
Yeah.
clever enough for this?
Am I just stupid?
I
Which
have
one
seen
is it?
I have seen some before where I'm like, I'm gonna assume this is yeah, I've seen some before where they use a really strange word for
Yeah.
women or men, and it's just like
Or like weird pictures. And I'm like, can you just say like women, please?
yeah, it's true. You know what's so weird is here at the restaurant down here, Hook and Barrel, their
Mhm.
bathroom situation is weird. It's like
How so?
well, it's between okay, so there's the 2 restaurants and it's between the 2 restaurants. So it's between
Mhm.
Croissants and Hook and Barrel. You go
Right.
through this door and there's the bathroom. But right when you walk in this door, it's like I think men's off to the one side, women's off to the other, but there's like a communal sink area, which is
Oh.
really weird to me. I don't like it. I don't want to wash my hands next to a guy. No, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I've only been in there once, but anyways, I digress. Okay. Yes. So that experience when I was a child, I got through that though. I didn't, I don't remember much after that, but I managed to live another
Because you
day.
blocked the rest of it out.
I live another day. But, but in general, I mean, choosing wrong or not being able to find the bathroom is literally not life or death. It's not. Feels scary, but you can get through that by just getting up and doing it. You can get through that. That's how you get through fear is you do it. Because a lot of the things that we're really afraid of in this day and age in the moment fears, not like, oh, let me spin it in my head for, democracy's falling apart and the world is burning. Those are real fears. Those are existential fears. But
Yes.
in the moment fears, we have very little that is threatening our actual life and survival in the moment. Now, it does happen. I mean, good instincts. I think I do credit my defined spleen looking back at my life. In what has gotten me through a lot of things. Like, I'm not a risk taker. I'm not like a big risk taker, right?
Yeah.
But when I was younger, things like I do have really good situational awareness around me, crowds, driving. I think my defined spleen helps me be a good driver because you can kind of be aware of what's going around you at all times without having to think about it. And I
Hmm.
think I do that, that's why I don't mind traveling so much, because I feel like those senses are always on and they're running in the background to ensure my survival or well-being. Now, whether or not
Hmm.
I listen to them, because I'm sure I've been warned before, you probably shouldn't do that, and I did it anyhow, I was probably right. But for the most part, like, I think that there's definitely that survival piece in some experiences and things in the past that I think is true.
I'm like
um
always listening to people around me. Like always, like whenever we're out, always like listening to people. I'm always looking at people. Like I'm always just kind of
mhm
taking it in.
mhm same, yeah.
Presley does not.
Oh, I will say, when we're talking about fears and the spleen, that from what I've heard with people with undefined spleens, they can definitely pick up and amplify the fear around them, in the sense that they could tend to be more afraid of certain things or in certain situations than those with defined spleens. And they may not know why, because it's not even theirs, but
Hmm.
from what I hear, I think I heard someone say, our husband can watch scary movies and all this other stuff and doesn't bother him that much, but it kind of sticks a little bit more in her. She gets a little more scared about some of this stuff because it feels so much more scary. Um, so that's another thing with having to define spleen, to kind of be aware of really the energy that you're broadcasting. And if it's associated with any of these fears, that's something to always pay attention to. Okay, so are you ready to get into
Yeah.
the gates? Okay,
Are we gonna start at the top of the spleen?
we are going to start at the
Yes.
top left there with the gate 48.
Gate 48.
Gate
Come on
48.
down.
Gate 48 is known as the well. That's the uh, human design name for it. And it's the gate of depth. And so,
Well, that makes sense.
yeah, it's very deep. um, so what's the gate here really? Well, first of all, what it's about is really having an awareness of like a potential solution or not. It's in this same channel. It's in the collective
Circuit.
circuit. Yeah. Um and so it connects above it to the throat center, gate 16. Now, the gate 48, you see how it's the gate of depth. These are people that usually are very, um, very wise. They have a depth of knowledge on a lot of things. However, they have a deep fear of inadequacy. And
Mm.
so it carries this fear of not knowing enough, of not having enough information to move forward. So if you think about it, if its strength is having a awareness of a potential solution or something to do, that the converse fear would be like, I don't have enough information, and they fear that they don't have enough depth. That's a hard word to say quickly.
Depth.
Depth. And so this inherent fear here can get kind of a stranglehold on people here who are defined here. And they may struggle in all areas of life with feeling like they just don't know enough. And they can struggle with also expressing their depth of knowledge because they just don't feel it's enough. Like these are people that get stuck in constant learning and training and certification and cycles of more learning and training. Like, well, I just need another thing and then I'll know enough. And then I need another thing and then
Mhm.
I'll know enough. Um, and so, with this fear of not knowing enough, they get in that cycle of never taking action because,
Analysis
yeah,
paralysis.
because they're always preparing, but they're never moving forward.
Is this one of your five?
Yes. Clear and present danger here for me. How did you know, Haley? Is it my yoga certification, the meditation training, the Reiki
Reiki.
certification, the EFT training? Like, what is it? One more thing I think I need to know. So again, the optimal expression here of this gate is a depth of knowledge that is necessary to just intuitively know what needs to be done, or what people need to know when it's the time to know. And so you really have to, if you have this gate, you're going to wrestle with this fear of not knowing enough. And so you just have to start working with trusting yourself and trusting source that you'll know what you need to know when you need to know
Mhm.
it. It's might not be present all the time. Um, and I have heard and I have experienced that it is an irrational fear, because usually people that carry this gate do have a real depth of knowledge that they can't see. They don't understand how much they do know because they just feel inadequate all the time.
Mhm.
And I can attest to that. I mean, maybe I know nothing. I don't know.
No, you know a lot because I mean, anytime I come home, I'm like, what is this? What is that? Do you know about this?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you
and
pretty
also,
much have an answer.
or I'll look it up. Line 1 and gate 48 can really spend a lot of time looking things up and trying to understand everything. Yeah. So I
Like
do
what
that.
other movies actors have been in.
Yeah. Um, one thing I think is interesting in this gate, just a side note, that people with
Hmm.
this gate also have, it says great taste visually
Oh,
and just literally great taste.
oh,
Might have a flair for the culinary arts. I'm just saying.
just saying.
I'm just saying. I may have been
Not to
known.
toot my own horn here.
I might know in my way around the kitchen. Okay, and so if you have this defined and you find yourself struggling with this very fear that we talked about of feeling inadequate, just maybe look at what it is you're ruminating over, right? And ask yourself, what do you need to get moving? Like, do you really need to know, or do you need validation from some other source that you know what you know? Do you really need to take one more training before you decide to start working with people? Maybe just try talking to people. And again, when we talked about before, last time we were talking, it was about some of these feelings. Are they even true? Is it true that you don't know enough? Hey,
Hmm.
I could just talk to you and you'd be like, you know a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then ask yourself, are you still learning as a way to stop doing, or to not
Ooh.
start doing, I should say?
Oh.
Because, I mean, really, if all that information's in there, what good is it without anybody else being able to benefit from everything you
Yeah.
know? So, and do you really not know? You ask yourself, do you really not know what you know? Yeah, I know a lot.
Do you really
Okay.
not know? Okay. Do you really not know what you know?
Yeah, right?
Question mark?
It's a very deep question, Haley. Comes from great depth. Okay, so moving over to gate 57, which is a very interesting and powerful gate in the human design system. It's the gate of intuition, intuitive clarity.
Mm.
It's called the gentle. I love that name in the I Ching, the gentle, because it is like the gentle awareness, right? Um, And it's the awareness to hear truth in the now or not, it says in traditional human design. So it's very closely tied to hearing specifically the right ear. And
Specifically, okay.
which, I have noticed sometimes when you're trying to hear the truth or you want to hear what's really being said, these people might tend to listen more with their right ear
I'll have to
when you
pay
have this.
attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because on the other side in the solar plexus, I believe it's gate 22 is the gate of the left ear, which I think your dad has that gate. And I think that's the ear he went deaf in.
It is. It's his left side. Semi-deaf.
Semi-deaf, right? He doesn't have gate 57, I don't believe. Presley does, and you do not. And so now gate 57 is one of the, this part of it. It's part of that integration
Oh, was
channels.
it was that six? Was it six gates, or am I misremembering that
Well,
part?
if you look at it, can connect the 57 can connect to three separate gates. It connects up to the 20 in the throat. So
Yep.
that's intuition. That's the knowingness in the moment, in the now, in the present. It's gate 10, which is having this knowingness about what is right for the self love,
And
and it's acting in
10 is that is
G
the
center.
will G center. Okay.
Yes. And then it also connects, it goes up and hooks over to the sacral center, gate 34, gate of power. So that is
I have that
known.
one.
Yeah. I have that channel 57, 34, 34,
I
57.
have it in a conscious and unconscious sign.
Mm-hmm.
With
So,
Pluto.
so
Okay.
this gate is attuned to sound. And so there's a lot of intuition here because, again, it's that primal sound of like being able to hear what is about to happen, using that sense of what's going on in your environment to help you um, kind of tune into what is about to happen. And so that awareness helps ensure the survival. It's like hearing the crack in the leaves, way off behind you somewhere. Like, what is that? I got a lot of that. Um, and so this knowingness or excuse me, this awareness helps people or helped us as it evolved to know what was going to be necessary to prepare for. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to blank in order to, survive. So what this fear then that is associated with this is the fear of the future. It's the fear of what could happen, of what might happen.
Mm,
And
that makes sense.
yeah, you could see how this primal instinct could turn against yourself of always hearing that like snap twig or always hearing,
Mhm.
oh gosh, something bad's going to happen. Um,
And I
and so,
wonder, like, since we are not so much in the splenic awareness anymore,
mhm,
if it's like, since it's not like in air quotes being used as much, if it kind of has
mhm.
turned into more of like the fear side, because it's like you're not using it how it's like necessarily how the awareness was originally used.
Right, right. Before we developed this mental and emotional awareness, when we were just operating on instinct like animals do, these are things that have helped us survive, and they still are very well used. And we can tune into these awarenesses for sure. They are there to help us because it still helps us tune into what's happening in our environment, and it still can lead us in the correct direction of what's correct for us in our by using our body in that awareness and
Hmm.
not our heads. But yeah, it can, you know, like you said, it can be triggering these other things that are not life and death situations, but it feels that way.
Hmm.
Right. And so if you're afraid of the future, you fear what it's going to bring, so you hold back. You don't move forward because you don't know what's going to happen, right? So one way to help alleviate that fear is to stay focused in the moment because the spleen operates in the moment.
Hmm.
And so if you're always looking too far ahead, waiting for something to happen, that's not staying present. That's being in the future. And so stay present and then just act when you are guided to act. Because really it's going to give you the intuitive awareness of knowing the right timing for the perfect um, expression through, the throat center, or for the perfect time for collaboration with others, or just internal alignment. So it's a very powerful gate. So now we're going over to gate 44. 44 connects over to the will center, gate 26.
Yeah.
So I also have this gate. And
So have you had all three of these, or just 48 and
yes,
44?
yes, I have this one as well. So gate 44 is also known as coming to meet. That's like the I Ching name for it. But
Coming to meet.
it's the gate of alertness.
Hmm.
So this gate very much understands the patterns of the past. And it is really being able to see what happened in the past. And it reaches over towards the 26. And they say this whole channel is about really about sales and marketing. It's part of this channel around business. What? Were you going to say
I said,
something?
oh, we've
Ah,
talked about that before.
yeah.
The sales.
But this being able to look at the patterns of the past and see what has happened in the past to be able to make predictions, about the future. And but that then therefore creates a fear of the past, specifically a fear of the past repeating itself.
So we
And
have gate 57, which is
mhm,
fear of the future, and then 44, which is fear of the past.
yeah, yeah. As I
It's like,
said,
stay in the moment.
yes, as I said, this has been very enlightening to me. And it's the fear also of the past catching up with you. And so it's this afraid of what has happened before will happen again. And so it can leave you stuck. And how it can express, at least how it expresses for me, is, well, in lots of ways, but in the deep seated ones, it would probably be in business, and moving forward in a new type of business or building a new business, because we had a business, for all those years. And
Mhm.
there was a lot of things that did not go well, I feel, for me. And but it does also help me see how I want to build a new business, because I know that I no longer want to have a business that relies on weather, location, employees, like a brick and mortar. I said I will never have a location based business again. It's too
Mm-mm.
much. And there's this fear that it just a lot of these things may happen again. You may really have liked the experience on the offset and then it turned bad. So you get afraid of trying new things because it didn't work out before. It could play out in so many ways in relationships or whatever. It's this fear of
Mhm.
moving forward because it didn't work out before, and it you were hurt before, or some of these things, which you can see how that could be good for survival, instinctual awareness, right? That alertness of
Yeah.
like, oh no, I remember if you jump out of a tree, you break a leg. Don't do that again.
Don't want to do that.
Or stay away from that side of the forest because that's where that bear is. So we're there. It's those instincts, because we used to wander. We didn't have GPS, didn't have phones, it's just like didn't have maps practically. Not practically.
I mean, in like
There
early
was a,
human,
but yeah,
early human, there were
early,
no
early.
maps. You were just
Yes.
wandering, but yes.
You were wandering. And so you did have to, you did your instinctual, and this is really interesting because I've been reading and learning about this also lately, about how the brain works, and how your brain makes maps really of its surroundings automatically. And that goes back to that primal brain of ours of taking in clues from the environment and creating a map in your head so you know which direction to go and how you find your way back. And so they say it's really good, and it's, especially in this day and age when we do rely so heavily on our phones and GPS, that in a new environment, if you feel safe, if your spleen says you're safe, um, to just wander and see if
Mhm.
you can like find your way back. Like a guy I was listening to talk about is how he said whenever he's in a new city, he walks out of his hotel and he just walks and sees if he can find his way back. And
Mm.
I think that's very much tied to this gate of understanding where you are, seeing the patterns, and knowing what's safe.
I
Yeah.
don't do that with like when I go travel, but sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I will mentally walk through an apartment we had.
I find a lot of your input revolves around falling asleep and things you do
well, well,
to
maybe
quiet your
that
mind.
that may just be because like most of my day I have some kind of audio or visual stimuli. I just don't
Mhm.
like I don't sit in silence. Like I don't work in silence or anything. So that's like falling asleep is when I am in silence. So then I guess I realize what my brain is doing.
Oh, child. I think you need some quiet time. Nature. Don't be afraid of what your brain has to say. Okay.
But
So,
when I actually have to like solve something or decide on something, I don't have any stimuli.
oh, another thing I want to say about this gate, which I think is fun, is it's the gate of intuitive smell, which they call
Oh,
clair olfactants, factants, which is really interesting because these are people that their instincts, it could be literal smell, but it's also they can get a smell for people or for things in the sense that they could like smell a rat, or it's like an inbuilt BS detector.
oh. So 48 is taste,
Mm-hmm.
57 is the right ear, and
Mm-hmm.
now 44 is
Smell.
the smell
Mm-hmm.
test.
They smell.
To smell.
Yeah, so they do have these instincts, which is interesting because yeah, which makes sense because it reaches over towards gate 26, which is like they call it the egoist, but in quantum human design, she calls it gate of integrity, and so you
Mm,
kind of get a smell for who is in integrity and who isn't, what's
mhm.
bullshit and what's not, and
And smell is the sense that is most strongly associated with memory.
mm-hmm, yeah, past patterns. Mm-hmm. It is so true too. Isn't it crazy
Science
when
and
you can
human
smell
design.
something and you know it's a really old something, but you can't pull it out of your brain yet? You're just like,
Hmm. You're like,
where
this
is
smells
that
so
coming from?
familiar. Where is this?
Like you're I have one of my favorite nostalgic smells is I can only describe it as laundry that's been in your dresser drawer, clean laundry for a long
Hmm.
time. It has
Hmm.
this, and it takes me back to the not basement, the attic bedroom in my grandmother's house, like the sheets that she would put on the bed because they
Hmm.
only used that room. It was a nice, oh, I say attic, it's not like the attic, a lot of houses.
No, it was like a finished room
Oh yeah, it's
over
very
the
small.
yeah.
It's perfect for the grandkids because the roofs are slanted. You can't be very tall in there. But yeah, it was painted. There was furniture and everything. But it was a guest room, and so she only pulled out the sheets when we would visit, and it always had that same like laundered smell. But they had
Hmm.
been in the clean in the drawer for so long, and
I know exactly what smell.
I know because your dad's because he has so many T-shirts that he
Yeah.
can't possibly wear them all in the span of time. They all stay in his dresser, some of them for a while, and then he'll
Hmm.
pull one out, and I'll be like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, you like that smell?" I'm like, "Calm down, buddy. Reminds me of my grandmother." But I may cuddle a little bit because it feels all snuggly like home. But that's a smell memory. Yes. Okay. So let's move on to gate 50, which is now in the middle point there. Gate 50 reaches over to the sacral center, to gate 27. And this gate is called the cauldron, and it's the
Oh,
gate of values. So in this
I don't
gate,
see how
this
that
is,
one. I don't
well,
see how that one works.
um, well, remember the I Ching is, it's the I Ching. It's not,
Is
this
that
is,
the I Ching is the cauldron one,
yeah,
or
that's what it's called.
okay?
Um, So the gate of values, this gate deals a lot with the values of the tribe. laws,
Mm,
values, preservation. The channel that it completes there with 27 is called preservation. And this
mm,
gate is associated, or this channel is associated, because they're the two channels here off the sacral center, the 5027 from the spleen, and then
mm-hmm,
the 59-6 goes over to the sacral center. Those two are in the tribal circuitry called the defense circuit, subcircuit. And these are
mm-hmm,
literally about family and creation. And so this side of it, the 5027, is more associated with the nurturing, like mother energy. And the other side is more
mm.
associated with the father energy. And so this is, when you think about the tribe, what the tribe holds as values and laws, and what is like line in the sand. This is what we hold true to. This is what helps protect us. And this is what helps nurture us.
The
Um,
values.
the values. And so with this comes this fear of failing your responsibility.
Mm.
This is where a
That's a
lot of,
heavy burden.
yes, it is. This is where a lot of guilt
I
resides
can
in the
I
chart.
can see that.
Yeah, because you always feel this need to take care of your tribe, of your people, and make sure everybody has what they need. And so there is this lot of a nurturing energy there. However, um, it's it's also fear that you'll take on more than you can manage. Okay.
Mm.
And so you're also afraid of letting other people down because you took on too much, of failing your responsibilities, of not being able to do what everybody needs from you to, help them feel nurtured, you're protected, or whatever. So yeah, mom guilt a lot, or dad guilt. It doesn't have to be just moms, because men carry
Parental
this
guilt.
energy as well. Parental guilt of, yeah, that you're just not doing enough. And so what's something to think about here is, if you are dealing with this fear of failing your responsibilities, of course that can keep you from doing things for yourself, because you're afraid that if I take the time for myself, or do things for myself, or do what I really want to do, my people are going to suffer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
Right.
if I step into this role that I want to step into, of, say, starting a new tribe or community, or having people look up to me, you're afraid I won't be able to handle it. I just can't
Mm-hmm.
do it. I won't have the resources or the ability to take care of these people.
Yeah. I also feel like it's like, oh, if I can't do this for my people, why should I be able to like do anything for myself? Kind of like that.
Yeah.
If I can't do it for anyone else, why do I have the right to do anything for myself?
Exactly. Yeah, you're putting your value in what you do for others. And so the thing I like to say here is that it's like the announcement on the airplane,
Mm,
put your oxygen mask on first. If you're traveling with small children or somebody that needs you, you got to put on your oxygen mask first, because you're no good to anybody if you're dead.
yeah.
Rather severe, but or
They say it a
incapacitated,
little
can't
nicer.
can't breathe. But it's the same thing. If you, like you said, the two, what do they call it? They're not. Oh, I want to use one of those clever terms. I can't think of an equivalency or something. But yeah, taking care of yourself does not negate taking care of others, right?
Mhm.
You can take care of yourself and take care of others.
If yourself is depleted, is drained, is miserable, you're not going to be good to anyone else.
No, you can't help anybody if you don't do that. So, yeah, you won't have anything available for others. But I like what you
That's
said,
why
what?
I was going to say that's why we have self-care now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's more prominent and more like,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's more of a thing, it feels like.
Yeah. And there are other gates where that's really prominent too, but this is one of them. And yeah, like what you said, where that thought of, well, if, you know, I can't do this for other people, why should I do it for myself? Well, that doesn't, necessarily equate.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, that's the gate 50, fear of responsibility, of failing responsibility. So, moving on to gate 32, which I do not have.
Is this
activated.
the first one you do not have?
Hmm. Oh, and also when I say have, don't have, remember, let's all put the disclaimer out there that we
Yes.
all have everything in the chart. It's whether or not you experience it variably, as in undefined, or in a more fixed way, defined. Okay. So, gate 32 is also called duration, and it's the gate of continuity.
Mm.
So, this is the gate awareness of what can be, it says transformed or not, but really it's part of this channel with the 54, which is the energy of knowing what will succeed and what won't. There, this is your dear one, I believe, has this channel, which no, he has the
I
other one.
have
He has the 54.
I
Hmm?
have the 54 as well.
Yes, but this is very much in what they'll say is in business as well, an entrepreneurial gate, because it's knowing what has what it takes to succeed, basically. So
Mm.
this gate here has a fear of failing, of not succeeding, and these are people that could be afraid to take action because they're afraid they won't succeed. And so that fear of failure can hold you back from doing what it is you want to do.
Mhm.
Can also make people resistant to change
Mm.
because they're afraid of change, because they're afraid to choose something different, it won't work.
Right.
um, or it could also be on the other side of things, people that push too hard in a certain direction, or they're too driven, they're too much in that direction because they work too hard because they fear that failure. They feel if they don't put enough effort in, it's going to fail. But really, it's just this underlying fear that is present there, not a rational fear, because its strength comes in knowing what will succeed or not, that it's going to have also this fear of not succeeding. So it can make people a little too conservative because, like I said, they do know what can or can't be transformed. And so it may keep them from taking any kind of risk because, like I said, a little too
Mhm.
conservative because they're afraid of failing. That is gate 32. Sorry. The next gate 28. Gate
Ooh.
28. This is called, I love the names of this one, Preponderance of the Gate. I mean, of the Great, not the gate, Preponderance of the Great. And it's called the Gate of the Game Player. Let that one sink in. And basically, the strength here of this one is to know what's worth fighting for in life, because the other end of this gate is 38, and this channel, the 2838, is known as struggle.
Mm.
And a lot of people are like, oh, I got the channel of struggle, great, I'm going to struggle my whole life. But really it's the energy of knowing that growth and evolution often comes through some sort of struggle, that
Mhm.
something has to be broken through in order to
So kind of
evolve.
like a fighting spirit, maybe.
Exactly, the fighter, yeah. Gate 38 is the fighter, yeah. um
Oh.
yeah. Very intuitive. um and so these with this knowing what's worth fighting for in life comes this fear that there's nothing worth fighting for. Life just has no purpose, there's no reason to even bother, and so you can see there could be a lot of melancholy in this gate as well, a lot of
Yeah.
depression of like, just not what's worth it, nothing's worth
This
it.
is Roxy's gate.
Oh, my poor puppy.
He's
Uh,
melancholy.
so it can bring a fear of maybe it being too hard. Things, might just be too hard. They also say it's a fear of death lives here, because it's like this fear that life is running out, that you have to like do something because there's this fear of that. Yes. So fear of holding back because they're afraid of the effort it might take. Is it worth it? Do I really want to do this? Is it even, what's the point? It's going to take too
Hmm.
much effort and it's not going to work anyhow. And so why even bother?
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Why even bother?
And so that can also lend to, unfortunately, people could get stuck in the energy of, I always hate using the word victim, but victimhood, or feeling that life isn't fair. It's just like,
Mm.
what's the point? Things are just too hard or too risky, so I won't even bother. So that's what the fear is there. This is also a what they call a clairaudient gate. It is also tuned to sound as well, but I don't know specific here.
It's just both.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and lastly, the very last gate, gate 18.
My only spleen gate.
Your only skin, which is also referred to as work on what has been spoilt, or
Spoilt.
spoilt, or the gate of correction.
I
So,
like gate of correction better.
oh, I know you do. This is an awareness of a pattern, what patterns are patterns that need to be corrected or not. So it is having that eye for what is working here and what's not working here. And so this is this energy that is associated with perfectionism, of maybe too much emphasis on what needs to be perfected. And so this obviously can bring a pattern of the fear of not getting it perfect, of not moving forward with things, or not trying, or not, because it just won't be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, because if you look at the spleen center where gate 18 is, energy comes from the root, gate 58, to the 18, and then goes up to the 48, which is also that fear of not being good enough or not knowing enough. So that energy also kind of starts down there in the 18 of not getting it right.
Rude.
This is the energy of staying small, because you fear it won't be good enough, that you won't be able to do it well enough. So you just like don't try. The gift here is being able to see what is not working and what needs improvement, because we always have to keep evolving, like, stripping away what doesn't work, what does work, what do we want to carry forward, what is worth it, right? But it can also lend you to being a little too critical, especially on the self, and not getting it all right. So yeah, that's basically that one. Do you resonate with that, Haley?
I think I resonate with like the staying small and not trying things because it won't be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like having to find the bathroom because I don't want to look stupid.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I have that gate as well. I don't have the full channel. You have the full channel, so at least there is for you, there's a flow of energy there from the root center, so you do get the full effects of that channel, of being able to.
What is that channel?
That is the judgment. It's called judgment. But again, it's having that intuitive pulse. It comes, the root gives you that energy of, okay, when it's time to act, it's like usually acting in that direction of what maybe needs to change, what needs to be corrected, what needs to be brought forward into something new, and making it better. It's the energy of making things better. Also, well, I would say real quick, in gate 18, in traditional human design, it says that there's also this fear and mistrust of authority in this gate as well, in gate 18. Because if you think about it, you need to kind of question those things in order for, things to happen. Is what this authority is saying correct? Is what this authority is telling me I have to do correct? Is it right? Is it what it needs to happen or not? So okay, now I think we are complete with that. So, with that being said, Haley, with talking about all these fears, what is the best way to move through fear?
Well, they say you're supposed to face your fears.
Yes, because, and it's interesting when we go ahead. Were you gonna say
Well,
something?
I was kind of gonna say how like most of the time it's much worse in your head than what it actually is. Like
Exactly.
anytime I'd have to give a presentation in college, I would absolutely hate it going up to it, I'd get so nervous, like I hated it. But then I always did well in it, like except for sometimes I'd forget to breathe, but that's just something. But like it was always just much worse in my head than the actual experience.
Yeah, and that's true for most of us because the brain can definitely do a
Spiral.
number on you. Yeah. And so when they say, feel the fear and do it anyhow, right? Just move through it. Because if you think about it, the spleen center is all about the present moment,
Hmm.
right? So it's just in that moment. And that's why they say when you usually get through that, you get to the other side, you see it's not such a big deal because you've moved beyond that present fear that you have. It's not real. It's like, I mean, there is healthy fear for sure. There's definitely
Yeah.
healthy fear out there of cautionary, I shouldn't eat that, or I shouldn't go there. I
I
shouldn't
shouldn't
walk
leap
down.
off this cliff.
Yeah, I shouldn't walk down that dark alley at night. Those definitely, or I shouldn't drive 150 miles an hour.
Yeah. Things like healthy fears that will keep you alive and safe. Those
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
valid.
Yeah. But for the most part, you've just got to move through the fear. And so if you are dealing with a lot of these themes or these fears, and they're not always present all the time, but they can definitely overlap. And like I said, I can definitely see it play out in my own experience of what has held me back and what is it really, because your mind will lie to you.
It does.
It will rationalize your fears. It will take
Hmm.
these fears of the future and the past and be like, "Oh yeah, remember this happened?" And then it'll go through your mental filter of all the things that all the times you were correct that it was wrong, or it's
Hmm.
challenging. So you have to really, when this fear shows up, before you move through it, you could always just say, "Okay, fear, what are you trying to tell me? Like,
Hmm.
what are you really trying to tell me? What is this really about?" And whether it's conversation you have in your head, some people need to write it out. Writing out could help a lot because you'd be surprised what comes out when you're writing. What is it you want to show me? Is there something I really need to be concerned with here? Or you ask yourself, is what I fear actually true? Like, what's the worst that could happen? I hear people say that all the time. Think about what's the actual worst thing that could happen. Like, literally think of it and then ask, okay, well, then when that happens, what's the worst thing after that? And it's just like kind of breaking and dismantling that fear of, I mean, what's the worst thing that happen if you get up and walk across the restaurant without knowing where the bathroom is? What's the worst thing that could happen, Haley?
Someone would just stare at me and watch me while I do it. Although I could trip too.
Yeah. Is that a real fear? I mean, is that really life threatening? No, it's
No.
embarrassing, but no. Is it going to like threaten your safety and survival?
No.
We still have somewhere to go tonight and rest your head
Yes.
if you accidentally can't find the bathroom. I mean, you're never really afraid of like, I'm just gonna pee right here.
No.
You'll survive. You'll survive.
Yeah.
You may be uncomfortable. You're gonna think about this next time you go to a restaurant. You're gonna be
I
like,
know.
damn it, fear. I got this. So funny. Oh, and then depending on if you're defined or undefined, ask yourself, especially if you're undefined in the center, but also if you just don't have this gate defined, ask yourself, especially, let's just preface this again. If you are undefined in the spleen center, ask yourself, is this even my fear?
Mm,
Am I really afraid of this? Or am I
yeah.
just feeling that fear? It's a good question to ask.
Hmm.
Because you might find out that, no, I'm not really afraid of that. I don't know why I feel this way. Like, what's the big deal? So feel the fear, do it anyhow, but
Acknowledge it.
acknowledge it, but also kind of act from a place of being more emotionally aligned. Like, just don't be reactionary. If you have to explore where the fear is coming from, just take a moment and ponder it, center it, see if you can clear it. Maybe journaling. If you do tapping, you can tap on. I do a lot of tapping, EFT, to kind of get through those fears. And then also, Focus more on desired outcomes instead of doomsday possibilities. Fear of failure and derailment and all those other things. Think about, and that's being emotionally aligned. That's acting more from that solar plexus of like, okay, what do I want to happen? I'm afraid I'm going to fail all my responsibilities here if I try to set off on a new course of building a new community or a business. I won't be able to live up to it. Well, instead of focusing on what you're afraid might happen, get more attuned before you start taking those actions and moving through that fear by focusing on what you would like to happen and aligning with that energy. So,
right.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
So, there we go. The Spleen Center and its fears demystified. But yeah, I definitely, from my own experience, again, being able to see them now and recognize them and know that this is really just kind of a mechanical almost thing that's happening, having an awareness of an awareness. It does make it feel not so life and death. It is still challenging to move through these things, but knowing that I won't actually die and that it's just my awesome awareness and intuitive instinctual system trying to keep me safe. I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert who wrote Eat, Pray, Love and some other great books, but she said she wrote a book on creativity. One of my favorite books. It's called Big Magic. It's so good. Anyways, I think it was her that said, fear is allowed to be in the car, but it doesn't get to drive the car. It's like it can hang out with you and inform you and be in the back and be like, hey guys, because it's always been there to keep you safe. A lot of these things were there to keep you safe, and not just from real threats, but from being hurt. If you were hurt in the past or whatever, it's trying to help you. It really is. Your fear does want to keep you safe, and
otherwise we wouldn't have fear.
Right. But it doesn't mean it gets to drive the car. Like she says, you can put it in, like she says something like you can ride in the back, you can eat the snacks, you can hang out with the rest of us. You get to come along because you've always been there for us and you've always have our best interest at heart. But no, you don't get to tell us where we're going.
You're a horrible driver.
I like that analogy. And that's another good, like I said, if you ask your fear, what are you here to teach me? What do I need to learn? You do find that a lot of times that it will talk back to you and tell you that, well, you remember this happened before, especially if you have gate 44. Okay. So that's that. So I hope that was useful to everybody out there and to you, Haley.
I like that one. I like that one.
Yeah, it's fun. And because I think everybody can relate to what they're afraid of.
There's a whole lot of fear out there.
Yeah. So look at your body graph and do some research, everybody, and see if there's any of these themes that are maybe holding you back, and see what you can do about taking some action where you might not have been before.
Talk to your fear.
That's right. Okay, well, I guess that's it for today's show today. And we really appreciate everybody being there to listen to us.
Yes, listeners.
And everybody take care, Haley, and you have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. You sounded like you were holding back on that a little bit.
Well, I couldn't decide if I was just going to say bye or not.
All right. Well, I'll say it. So have a good night and goodbye, Haley.
Bye.
You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.